joining us now is Republican Congressman from Texas, Tony Gonzales. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. A furor has erupted over some remarks by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. I want you to first take a listen to what she said to reporters on Thursday.
If we are on a target and doing an operation, there may be individuals surrounding that criminal that we may be asking who they are and why they're there and having them validate their identity.
Okay, critics say this amounts to the federal government telling American citizens to carry their papers. Defenders say that this is a warning to protesters and observers who are congregating around ICE in the field. This is not an abstract reality in your district where this has been going on a lot longer. These interactions have been going on a lot longer. What do you hear when you hear the secretary say that?
Yeah, good morning, Chris. Thank you for having me on. What I hear from the secretary with those words is the law is going to be enforced. It's going to be enforced on not only those that are breaking the law, but those that are maybe assisting that individual or those individuals breaking the law. Law and order is very important to this country. The sooner we can de-escalate things in Minnesota and across the country, I think the safer people can be. But everyone has a role to play in this, including the mayors, the governors, members of Congress. We all have to work together to de-escalate things.
Okay, well, which brings us to the question about the 111th Airborne. President said he didn't need to invoke the Insurrection Act last week, but today the news is about the Airborne Rangers there getting ready to deploy to Minnesota. It's not your job to assess the situation on the ground in Minnesota, but you did spend more than a decade in the military, and Congress does have oversight here. Do you think that the use of the Insurrection Act is merited here?
I do, and this reminds me very similar to what happened in Los Angeles last year. And I'm of the mindset the strategy that works oftentimes is when you escalate to de-escalate, meaning you have overwhelming force on the ground, not brutality, force, to basically show that lawlessness is not going to take place here. And then once that happens, you de-escalate things. That's exactly how we got out of the Los Angeles mess, is they infused a bunch of different men and women on the ground to basically overwhelm the protesters. What I'd also say, too, is we have to look for ways for solutions, not just problems, not just blame. One of the solutions that I'm working on is I got one of my community projects through that creates an intel center in the jail. There's over 3,000 jails in the country. Here in Bexar County, what if we had an intel center where the local law enforcement would then share information with the federal law enforcement, and instead of going house door to door outside, you're going cell to cell looking for criminal illegal aliens that are already had due process and are apprehended in our jail. That is how we get out of this mess.
Okay, well, to that point, Democrats have learned something nationally in recent years that they have known in your district for a long time. You said it before, border security and immigration enforcement are broadly popular. Republicans owe a lot of your success in 2024 to that. But also, now we see voters sending a different message. Here's a new Wall Street Journal poll, and it says that majorities now oppose current tactics on deportation and the use of ICE. It seems like for a lot of voters, the ends just don't justify the means here. Talk about the danger for your party in November about that disconnect.
Well, Chris, folks are anxious, and you never want to have Americans be anxious, in any form or fashion. You want them to have trust in their government at the local level, state level, and federal level, and you ultimately want them to be contributors, right? You want there to be collaboration. I heard that from Governor Meyer. You want to have collaboration and coordination at all levels. When you have that, then there's a level of trust, transparency, and then all of a sudden there's this less anxiousness. So the sooner, once again, we can get to targeting criminal convicted aliens, which I think are already in our jails. We don't have to go anywhere. What if we just went to our jails to scoop up these, hundreds of thousands of criminal illegal aliens? That's one of the ways that I think can get everyone on board.
Okay, before you were in Congress, you've spent a long time thinking and talking about foreign policy, national security, and this whole framework. So we can't know for sure, but as the administration seemed to have backed off the president's initial threats against Iran, but after days of deadly crackdowns, there's no reprisal from the United States. Is the United States leaving these protesters in the lurch again? And speaking very realistically, can or should America do about that?
we shouldn't leave these protesters to just lie in the wind and die meaninglessly. The Persian people are wonderful people, and the sooner that they can be free, the sooner that region can be safe, not only for Israel, our strongest ally in the Middle East, but for the world. And once again, Iran is a great place, but their regime, the brutality of that regime, for them to kill their own people to the tunes of thousands, there's no room for that. And once again, America needs to be the leader of the free world and say, whether it's in Venezuela, Iran, or elsewhere, we're not going to allow that to take place. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean troops on the ground, but there's other ways for us to be involved.
Okay, you're enjoying being at home right now, but you know what's waiting for you when you come back to Washington. So before I let you go, I got to ask, the White House rolled out a new health care proposal, but not one that addressed the huge premium spikes for Obamacare enrollees. This is millions and millions of people. The Senate is cooking something up. How receptive are you to making a deal on this question?
I don't think a deal needs to be made. What needs to happen is we need to have this conversation. The healthcare conversation is very complex. It's a lot of money, and it's easy to point fingers and blame someone else. What I am excited to see is Congress is now working for the first time in a long time. We're codifying President Trump's executive orders into law. We've done that by passing these appropriation bills that are getting signed into law. We're well on our way to having all 12 appropriations bills signed into law, which is absolutely incredible. So I think the next thing after we get the approach done is let's have the conversation on healthcare. Let's arm wrestle, let's debate, let's talk about the ways on how we can make everyone's lives better, and that's exactly the role that Congress should be having.
Okay, America, if you knew that Bigfoot, Texas was named for a Texas Ranger and not the mythical forest creature, you would know him already, but if you don't, there he is, Congressman Tony Gonzales. We thank you.